Yeah, a couple of times. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. I've had a few messages of people asking, was I taking a break or going on a vacation or something like that? And I did actually have a few things to do, but the reality was I made a comment about on videos that I did about how, given the globalists have a very totalitarian way of controlling things, that democracy really just gets in their way, and that is the effects of that. Some may say we might be seeing around us at the moment in the Western world, but that video surprisingly was all it took. So I got an allegation of community guidelines had been transgressed, but goodness me, I don't know which ones. But anyway, that's an arbitrary method used by the globalist left to silence voices that they disapprove of. I'm surprised they bother with a small channel like mine, but they seem to be putting an unusual amount of effort into suppressing the stuff that I'm putting out, and you wouldn't think they could be bothered. But anyway, they are. But in this essay, I'd like to talk about Twitter and Elon Musk's policies regarding censorship and who can be reinstated on the Twitter platform and why and so on. Now, there's a sort of few things that I'd like to say about that. Firstly, the reinstatement of Donald Trump. He should never have been taken off Twitter, in my view. And anyone who's concerned about a functioning democracy and the rule of law, due legal process, the First Amendment, all that sort of thing, would surely agree with that. That doesn't mean you have to agree with what anyone on Twitter may or may not say, but he was a sitting elected president of the United States, and some Indian woman with a really bad attitude decided that she got, no doubt at the prompting of various forces in one side of politics, took him off the platform. So that was I was quite astonished by that. I almost couldn't believe it at first. I thought maybe they'll just do it for an hour or two and then he'll be back on. But no. So anyway, President Trump's back on now. Now, as not only given he was a sitting president, but today he's a candidate for president. He's announced his candidacy for the president for 2024, and so he's entitled to as much public space as any other figure who's out there, standing for or intending to stand for public office. And that anyone would think differently about that is quite beyond my comprehension. But I notice the people that are saying that I've looked at a number of the Twitter tweets and other postings, and indeed the mainstream media, to deny a candidate for president any sort of a public platform is acceptable in their view, but to let him speak in public as a candidate for public office, that is the threat to democracy. I mean, can you get a more perverted position or attitude to these things? It's not possible, is it? But just talking about censorship generally, I think it's good that President Trump's back on that, back on Twitter, and as I understand it, either is being given another. Being brought back onto Facebook. I'm not quite sure about that. I'm not sure I understand necessarily what's going on there. But he's not on the platform, but they won't censor him if news about him's on there, or is he going to have a Facebook? But I really don't understand that, but maybe that'll become clearer over time. But talking about censorship generally, I was rather hoping that Elon Musk would say, okay, the censorship rules apply exactly the same to everybody. You don't get a free pass just because you support leftist globalist politics. Nobody gets a free pass if your information isn't factual. It's going to be fact checked. and if you do, purvey hatred on you, then that applies to everybody. Hatred of white people, hatred of straight people, hatred of Republicans, hatred of conservatives. All that is going to be banned just as assiduously as anything else. So this would even up the playing field. Now, what it would mean, though, if you look at the amount of information, even about Donald Trump, there was one, and I haven't got it in front of me, but it was words to the effect of they've reinstated a Nazi fascist who personally led a violent insurrection to overturn our democracy, and where many police officers were murdered. Now, that's patently untrue, patently false, and the person that put that out, in my view, should be banned, whether it's temporarily or for a month or a week or whatever it is, and that similarly their tweet should stay up, but that it should, in my opinion, should be fact checked. So that person can be exposed as a liar and a purveyor of falsehoods, and that they know the falsehoods. So that sort of thing can not only stop these sorts of things, but also embarrass the person making those absurd claims. Now, I'm more than happy if everyone's held to the same standard, and that's what I'm hoping Elon Musk does. But I've noticed that people can post all sorts of things that election denial about Trump's 2016 election, and that's perfectly fine. That doesn't get taken down. It doesn't get fact checked. There's no one losing their account over that. But if you try and say something about the 2020 election, then your video or your tweet or your posting will be taken down, and you'll probably be, in fact, you'll be banned for a certain amount of time. A guideline strike, whatever they call it. So it's clearly only one side is getting fact checked, and only one side is being censored. The other side isn't, and that's absolutely. I mean, there's no even argument on that. That is absolutely happening all across the media landscape, and also other things. The most horrible cruelty to animals, for example, is on YouTube, and people who have videos of tethered animals being torn to pieces and things like that, terrified, and yet that's fine. They can leave that there. But you say something that defies the globalist political position, and bang, that's it. You're banned, and you're deemed as having have some sort of a community guideline strike. So really, every device that the globalists are using to further their control of the Western world is protected speech by the media. And if you trespass against that protected speech, you'll be punished. But the reverse, isn't it? You talk, if the globalist left denounces straight white people and says the most horrible, hateful things about straight white people generally, that's fine. That's okay. So my view is that the governance of these things should be applied evenly across the board. You say something about hateful about white people, and that's it. That's just that's still hate speech, and it's hateful. Now, the globalist left would find that if they don't have the capacity to denounce and pour hatred on white people, then which would happen if everything was evenly, if all the censorship was evenly applied, then they would lose 90% of their voice, and so they wouldn't want that. So there'd have to be another way of doing it. Either everyone can tell lies about each other, or nobody can. But I don't see that the rules should be different for one group than they are for another. And I don't know if Elon Musk will go down that path. I certainly hope he does. But if he does, it'll be in itself a revolution, and it'll create a level playing field where ideas will have to survive on their merits. not on their propaganda value or their propaganda usefulness to the globalist cabal. So that's my view on that. Now, I don't know if you know, if there'll be any changes. If Mr. Musk does go down that path, then that'll make Twitter an avenue for, you know, the likes of the James O'Keefes and the President Trump, or indeed other conservative figures, to have a voice, and that will allow them then to rebut the lies that are told about them on the mainstream media and so on, and also to question. For example, just consider this: that if any election, it doesn't matter which election it is or who's standing for office, if something rather untoward happens, whether it be administratively or that it's such a huge surprise no one can figure it, then the public has a right to ask questions. Say, hey, you know, that doesn't seem right. That seems rather unusual. You know, can we and, you know, as a measure of the confidence that the authorities have in the system, they go, yeah, sure, no, not a problem. Let's do an audit on this. Not over some trivial matter, but let's do an audit. Let's see what happened. If there were irregularities, then we want to know about it as well. We, as the custodians of the electoral system, we want to know about it, and so we want to make sure that everything's completely above board, and we'll report back to the people, the voters, on what we find, and that, you know, and that's to restore or to ensure or instill confidence in the in elections. Now, pretty much everyone I talk to, it seems, that is either dubious about the outcome of certain elections, or believes that it's okay to tamper with election, provided the candidate you want wins, which is hardly a democracy, by the way. So the one of the things about an open platform on Twitter, assuming it is going to be that, it appears to be heading sort of, however slowly, in that direction, then that would permit questions to be asked about anything, any public policy, whether it be you know, elections or the Green New Deal or anything, and that's a good thing. Democracy should be and has been, you know, up until, you know, the globalists sort of took over, it has been a place where you know, it was a merit of ideas, a meritocracy of ideas, of policies, and so on. Now, it didn't always mean that every time the best policy or the best idea won, but most of the time it did. And when politicians are accountable not only to the voters, but also being scrutinised by free and independent media, then that lends itself to the democratic process, that the body politic realise that they are accountable and that they have to serve the people if they want to enjoy the fruits of office, and that's how a democracy should be. And so a free and open platform, if Twitter becomes that, is one step closer towards regaining that accountability that the body politic once had, that no longer have. And I think we need to rejoice and celebrate an open platform appearing, and hope that it'll spill over into some of these other platforms, you know, such as YouTube, and that we'll have a far more open platform. I mean, just to give you an idea, you know, the Kari Lake, for example, if I Google Kari Lake election, the only stories I get range from very negative to super negative against Kari Lake. Everything from she's an election denier, she's a Nazi, you know, and a close friend of twice impeached former president, and yeah, any negative thing they can say about it, they say, and that's the whole front. You know, the number one search page on the search results. Now, you just wouldn't get it all one way. It just wouldn't be only negative stories about Kari Lake appear. So in a free and open media landscape, you'd have negative stories, you'd have positive stories, you'd have neutral stories, you'd have ones that would emphasize this, and other ones would emphasize something else. Again, you'd have a wide-ranging mix, but every story about Kari Lake or about Donald Trump or James O'Keefe, every one of them is negative. Nothing is positive, and that's just not the real world. That's a contrived world where we're being fed propaganda, in my view. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.